Hi everyone, my name is Liz Eggleston and I run Course Report, which is a resource for students choosing a boot camp. If you haven't used Course Report, this is my one shameless plug of the video. We have thousands of alumni reviews, I think over 20,000 now, Q&As with students and instructors and everything that you need to choose the right coding boot camp for you. And today I am super excited. I'm joined by Megan Mulroy, who is about to graduate from Tech Elevator in Cincinnati in, I think, 3 weeks. And towards the end of Tech Elevator's 14-week Java boot camp, students do a Capstone Project, which a lot of boot camps do, these final projects. And Megan built a website called National Park Geek, which sounds really cool. And we think it's really cool to share your students' final projects because it really shows what you're able to actually build after a very short time at a boot camp. So Megan, I'm so happy that you could join.
Hi.
So we're going to talk about why Megan chose Tech Elevator. We're going to get a video walkthrough of her Capstone project, which will be very cool. And we're going to find out how her job search is going. So Megan, thank you so much for joining us. And maybe you can just start with like your pre-Tech Elevator story. What was your education background, your last career path? What were you up to before you went to Tech Elevator?
Sure. So I graduated from the University of Dayton with a degree in graphic design. So I have a background. I did print design and brand development. I worked in Colorado for a little bit, and then I moved back to the Midwest. And I was an in-house graphic designer at a consulting firm, which is really cool. I got to do a ton of different stuff there because I was the only one. So I did photography, videography, print design, printing. And then I got kind of thrown into some web projects. Is kind of how I started down this path.
That's really cool. And so when you decided to do a coding boot camp, what was your kind of goal? Did you go into it expecting to change careers? Did you want to just add a skill set to your current graphic design skill set? And did you have like an idea of the type of job that you wanted when you graduated?
I think I saw it and see it more of a career pivot than necessarily just adding skills. I think my background in graphic design is an asset to me because there aren't a lot of people who have both a background in graphic design and can code. But I do still want to code at my job. Like I don't want to just go revert back to the design part of it.
Totally. I mean, the design skill set is something that I'm sure can be taught, but like having those visual design skills are so valuable. So that's really cool. And how did you choose Tech Elevator? What was important to you when you were looking for a boot camp? And how did you come to that school?
Sure. I have a little bit of a unique story. I kind of was very wary of the boot camp situation. I'm not really sure why. So I originally applied for an apprenticeship and I went through 3 rounds of interviews for that and didn't end up getting it. But through that process, kind of realized how much I really wanted to do this and change my career path. So I had a short time to kind of decide where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, unless I wanted to wait till the fall. And in that time, I found a boot camp that was downtown, close to my job that I was working at. And it was just starting up. It was a new boot camp, but I decided to take that risk and go there because it was downtown, so I could kind of stick to my routine. And I coach CrossFit at night, so I could still do that. And I went and visited them, and I checked it out, and it seemed legit. They were part of a recruiting agency, so I thought that was a good asset to be able to find a job at the end. So that's how I kind of ended up at the one I ended up at. But after a week, I ended up switching to Tech Elevator because I realized being there that I wasn't getting what I had been looking for. It was a lot of go read this and kind of figure it out and do these exercises that are on this website. And I'm like, well, I can do that at my house, whereas I want someone to actually teach me. So I contacted Tech Elevator and told them my situation and met with them and ended up switching and started a week late and had to catch up with everyone else, which was very challenging at the time. But now I'm so glad I switched because of how much I've learned here. So I think that answered your question.
Yeah, well, once you started looking at Tech Elevator and like you realized that the first bootcamp that you went to didn't match your learning style, how did you know that Tech Elevator would match your learning style? I guess my question is like, for someone who's looking at boot camps, how do you find a boot camp that
out,
is going to match your learning style?
I think in hindsight, the one thing I definitely didn't ask enough questions about, I met the instructor at the first boot camp, and they told me, he has this extensive background, which was great, but I didn't ask questions about, well, how is he going to teach us? Because anyone can have a background, but if they don't know how to be a teacher, then it doesn't matter how much you know, right? You have to be able to tell people that. So I think I definitely would have asked more questions about that, how we were going to learn, and what each individual day was going to look like. And when I came to Tech Elevator to meet with them about switching, they were very clear, this is every day, this is what we do. You do lecture with the instructor, you code with them, you can see what they're doing on their computer, and then you have the afternoon to do exercises, which was amazing. And I've liked everything we've done so far.
Okay, cool. Well, that kind of leads into my next question, which is about the learning experience at Tech Elevator. So you mentioned there's some lecture, afternoons are for exercises and projects. Could you kind of tell us about a typical day and what that learning experience is like?
Sure. So we get here every morning and we do a short little 5 or 6 question quiz, and it's just kind of how are you feeling that day? If you have questions about the previous day, you can type them in, and we go over that at the beginning of the day. And then we do a short quiz, ranges from 5 to 15 questions about the actual material we covered the day before. We don't keep track of the scores. It's just so they know how we're doing and how much we've retained. And then if people missed a lot of, everyone missed one question, we go over it and kind of cover that material quickly again, and then we delve into what we're doing that day, which normally builds on what we had done the day before. And then in the afternoon, we do a lot of days most days we'd have individual homework, but then a lot of days we would also be paired up with someone in our class, and we would do some pair programming. And we'd always do the pair programming first to kind of figure it out together, and then move into our individual homework, which would then be due, if we had homework today on Monday, it would be due Tuesday at midnight. So you can't get it all done and you can't figure it out. You have the next day to kind of ask questions and figure it out.
Okay, so you're doing a lot of pair programming. Obviously, that's with other students in your class. What is the kind of group dynamic like? How else are you working with your classmates? Are you doing a lot of group projects, or is it a lot of kind of individual work?
I would say it's both. We normally got paired up with someone for the whole week, so we'd work with them for the week. And then at the end of each module, we have 4 modules. We're in the 4th one right now. At the end of each module, we did a project, which is one of the capstones I'm going to show you. And each project we did with a different person. So we've always just had 2 people, us and another person. And then the last 2 weeks, which I haven't gotten to yet, obviously, but we're going to be paired up in groups of 3 or 4. And then we're going to spend the whole last 2 weeks doing a really big capstone project.
Cool. And just before we go into the project, the bootcamp that you're taking at Tech Elevator is Java.
Yep.
Curriculum. So are those 4 modules broken down into different concepts in Java, or the project that you're about to show us? What was that module about?
So the first module was just Java. That's all we did. And then the second module was 2 weeks on databases. So we learned SQL, and that capstone combined them. So we used SQL and Java. And then the third capstone, which is the project I'm going to show you, we started learning templated websites and pulling stuff from databases to dynamically create web pages. So in the third capstone, we used the Java, SQL, databases, and then building the templated dynamic websites. And then now we're learning JavaScript in the 4th module. And then we'll put all of that together in our last big project.
As a graphic designer, someone with graphic design background, does this feel are these the skills that you were kind of missing to make that career change? Or do you suggest the kind of Java programming language or Java skill set for other graphic designers that want to?
Yeah, I think the Java is definitely Java itself is much more like total career change, right? It's all back end, not visual at all, but definitely like the CSS, writing JavaScript, creating the front part of the website, so much relevant to my graphic design background.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's see your capstone project. Will you
Sure.
share your screen and show us what you built?
Okay, can you see it?
Oh, cool, yes.
Okay, so I pulled these up too just to show you. I don't know. So we started the project. Everyone built the same kind of thing. We all built a National Park Geek website. They gave us this logo, and then we were given wireframes and directions on kind of what the client, quote unquote, was looking for in this website. So we tried to make it as realistic as possible. So we started, and this is the homepage. All of the content is being pulled from a database, and the image names and the descriptions and everything, and then it's being created on the back end, and all shows up here. So it shows you a list of all the different parks in the database with an image and their description, and then you can click on any of them, and it goes into that specific park and shows you some information about the park, and then a forecast, which we pulled also from the database. And then we have, so you can switch, if it's in Fahrenheit, you can switch to Celsius throughout anywhere on the website, and then it stays in there, and it'll carry over to any other pages you look at. It'll stay in whichever temperature you want. And then we created a little survey, so you could, it's taking a minute to load there. So you could pick which park was your favorite.
Cool.
And then you have to put in an email and where you're from. And then yeah, we made the little raccoon appear on any of the buttons. But then it shows you which parks have gotten the most votes. So it ranks them. It stores the surveys in the database and then counts them and ranks them based on how many votes each park has gotten.
Cool. Okay, so you came up with this idea as Tech Elevator gave you the specs, gave you kind of the assignment and the wireframes, and then y'all worked on this with 2 people per group?
Yes.
Okay.
So it was me and another person. Yep.
Cool. How long did you have to do the project?
So this one we had 3 days. So those days we did the capstone, we didn't do any lecture. We would just come in and start in the morning, and then we would work for the day, take a break for lunch, or, whenever you just needed a brain break, and work on it with your partner.
That's pretty neat. I mean, this is a pretty intense thing to build in 3 days, so.
It was. This one, I think everything kind of going together clicked for me. So this one I felt much more comfortable with, or maybe it was the visual stuff in the front that from my background, I don't know, but it was definitely, I really liked this one. I think this is the favorite one I've done.
And it looks like you have like sign in as a feature. So was that something that you had to build?
Yeah, so we went over like creating logins and stuff the last day in the module before we started the capstone. Okay. So we kind of added it on. If we had time, you could add it in. So me and my partner added it in. And all the functionality right now is it just logs in, it shows you your name, and you can log off. But it stores you, and you can create a new account, and it saves that into the database as well.
Very cool. So this seems like a database kind of heavy project. Could you tell us a little bit more about like the technologies that you used to build this? What kind of database is this, and what languages went into building this?
Sure. Should I leave this up or turn it off?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to walk us through little parts of it.
So all the back end that's making the website work is all built in Java. Mm-hmm. And then the database is a Postgres database, and we use SQL SQL statements to pull the information out of the database. And then I wrote all this down so I wouldn't forget it. And then each of the web pages is built as a JSP, which is the template we're using. A JavaScript page to pull all that information in and dynamically create the page. So if anything in the database changed, the page would automatically update. And then we used all the forms we we learned about form validation too. So if you don't put in information, it tells you it's required. Or if you don't put in an email in the form, it'll say you have to actually enter an email address. So that was part of our last module as well. And then we learned CSS too. So we did all of our own CSS for this project. We also learned about Bootstrap, but my partner and I went ahead and wrote all our own CSS instead of using Bootstrap.
Very cool. It sounds like, the backend is built in Java. That's what you're learning at Tech Elevator. It sounds like there's a lot of overlap between, what you learned in those modules and what ends up in the final project. Was there anything new you learned while you were building the project that was outside of the curriculum at Tech Elevator?
We definitely did some Googling and consulting of Stack Overflow. I think the funnest thing, it kind of spread through our class as everyone was working on this, was figuring out how to make your mouse change to the little raccoon guy. And some people had the mouse all the time, was like a bear and stuff. So that was definitely fun to kind of figure that out. And that was definitely on our own. I mean, it's not that hard. It's just in CSS, but figuring out how to do it was something me and my partner did, so.
Could you tell us about a roadblock or a challenge that you ran into while you were building National Park Geek and how you overcame it? Or did everything just go perfectly smoothly?
It never just goes perfectly, right? So since we just learned the user interface stuff, so adding the login and registering the person, on the last day, that was kind of an optional part of the project, or if you had time at the end, not so much optional, but wait to the end to do that. And I would say that was probably the hardest part for us, kind of figuring that out and then figuring out how to reflow the website so it still all worked once we had added that on.
Very cool. And were instructors around to help as you went? For
sure.
Or was
yeah.
Okay.
So we definitely worked together and used Google, and then our classmates, but our instructors are here the whole time too. So if you have questions, obviously they're more than happy to help you and answer any questions you have along the way.
Cool. Well, Megan, is there anything else about the project that you want to show off? The survey is really neat. And I know data validation can seem like the teeniest little thing, but actually it's cool to get to put that into practice in a project. So
for sure. No, I think that's about it. That's
cool.
All of it, I think.
Okay, well, thank you so much for showing us that. Were you what is the purpose, I guess, of these projects at Tech Elevator? Are you adding these to your portfolio? Is that something that you have help with at this point in the Tech Elevator process?
Yeah, so after each capstone, the next week we all meet with one of the instructors, and we have a code review. So we go through the whole thing with them, not just the front end, but also looking at all the code in the back and maybe you could have done that better, or you could make that simpler. And then once we do that, we go ahead and make any changes we need to and put it on GitHub, which we all have on our resumes to share with future employers.
Very cool. You mentioned earlier that in the last 2 weeks of the boot camp, you'll do a larger group project. Do you know what that's going to be yet? Do you get to choose what you build, or what's the process for doing one of those?
So from what I know so far, we're going to get a list of, I think it's somewhere between 5 and 10 projects. And we all get to vote on which ones we want to work on. And then the instructors are going to put us on teams to work together and put us on which project we do.
Very cool. Well, okay. So you are 3 weeks away from graduating. Is that right?
Well, 3.5, yeah. This week, after this week, we'll have 3 weeks, yeah.
So has Tech Elevator started the kind of structure around the job search? When do you start talking about applying to jobs, about doing your resume and your LinkedIn, all those types of things? Is that something that you're already getting help with, or are they don't think about this until you've graduated and then we'll tackle it?
No, we've definitely been working on it the whole time. So we have a separate program called the Pathway Program, which kind of runs concurrently through the whole 14 weeks. At the beginning, it's not as time intensive. It's, we start with elevator pitches and our resume, and if you've never had a LinkedIn profile and all that kind of stuff. And then I guess this would be another thing along with the instruction style that I never would have thought would have been as big of a deal as I think it has. Like we've had a lot of practice interviews, both behavioral interviews and technical interviews, which I think have been really, really helpful to just kind of realize, this is interview. It's pretty low stakes. You're just practicing with someone and they can give you feedback on how you're answering questions and stuff. And then tomorrow we actually start our first day of matchmaking. So we're going to have a bunch of different companies come in. And then I think I have 4 interviews tomorrow and I have 6 next week on the next day of matchmaking. So
with real companies?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's really exciting.
So it's like a 25-minute, like a phone interview basically. So I think everyone has around 10 of them between the 2 weeks. And then if you don't have a job, there'll be 1 more day of matchmaking after graduation. So
that's really cool. I imagine that those types of, your final project, but also all of these capstone projects are really nice to have like in your back pocket to get to talk about, because they are basically the experience that you have building things in Java, right?
For sure. Yeah.
That's really neat. Cool. Well, okay. So you haven't started like applying for jobs yet. You're going to start interviews tomorrow. That's very exciting. Have you like settled on do you have a specific career goal now? Have you kind of discovered during your time at Tech Elevator that you want to do a particular type of programming, or that there's like a dream company or a dream job that you have?
I think I've liked everything we've done, which I think is kind of my problem. I can't like focus on one. So I'm hoping to get a full stack role initially so I can kind of experience that, the full stack of everything we've learned. And I'm really hoping to find a company where I can work on a team and work with other people and continue to keep learning. Because I know like the boot camp is just the springboard and there's so much more to learn. That's really the most important things to me when I'm looking for a job.
That's great. Well, I think that with a visual design background and then now with Java skills, you are a very valuable.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, totally. And then we talked a little bit before about, switching boot camps a week in, and I'm going to assume, I always ask people what their biggest kind of challenge or roadblock has been in their journey to learning to code. I'm going to assume that had something to do with your biggest roadblock, but like, if not, then please correct me.
I would say that was definitely a big roadblock. Just figuring out that this isn't what I wanted. I'm normally like a super analytical person. It takes forever to make a decision. So this one time that I was like, just do it, Megan. I wish I could go back and do it the way I normally would, but whatever. So that was crazy. But I think for me, the biggest thing was just realizing that is pushing myself to do it. Once I didn't get that internship and realizing, yeah, it is a lot of money, but it's in the grand scheme of life, it's really not that much money. And figuring out you can do this, you can take this jump, you can quit your job and not have an income for 3.5 months, I think was probably the biggest hurdle for me to overcome to signing up for boot camp.
Well, because you went through that kind of hurdle of changing boot camps, I think that the advice that you're able to give today will help future boot campers. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Is there anything else? I feel like I've really picked your brain, but is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want other folks to know about Tech Elevator or about going to a boot camp, or any other just advice that you have for folks who are changing their career through a boot camp?
I think my biggest advice is if you think it would be a good fit for you, that you should just try it and just do it. Like I said, that was my biggest hurdle, is just taking that leap and finally doing it. But I've loved everything about Tech Elevator. I feel like I've learned a lot. We've been told our class is kind of different than in the past because we're very loud and we talk to each other a lot, but I've really enjoyed the people who have been here. It's a very eclectic group, and I think we've all learned a lot working together and being in the same class together, so that's been fun too.
Wonderful. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Thanks for joining. You have so many amazing tips. I can't wait to get all of these in a blog post. And good luck in your job search coming up. And if you've been tuning in, thank you so much for for joining us. We're going to share a transcript of our Q&A with Megan on the blog, and let us know in the comments what you'd like to see on the next Course Report video Q&A. Bye.
Bye.